week 11 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few running backs I look to get off the wire this week. The first guy, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. Damian Harris missed this ball game with a concussion. Stevenson was a game-time call going into Sunday's ball game with a concussion as well, but he played and he had a huge fantasy day. 20 carries, 100 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and even added 4 catches for 14 yards. So in PPR leagues, fantasy points in PPR leagues, Stevenson had in this ball game. And right here, it was a good game for him, no doubt about it. But the only thing with me is Damian Harris comes back. He's obviously the starter, even though I could see Stevenson getting a little bit of a workload. But Bill Belichick, you know how he is with running backs. He switches them in and out each and every week. You don't know who he's going to go with. But right now, Stevenson, in my opinion, he's not in the doghouse and pulls a Jonah Gray that we saw a few seasons ago after he had a 4-touchdown game versus the Colts. He was late to practice, and then the Patriots cut him, and you never heard from him again. As long as he stays in line and follows orders, obviously, and doesn't be late to practice or anything, Stevenson definitely could get carries in this offense. And he's a big physical back at 240 pounds. So right here, the last few games for Stevenson, Week 9 at Carolina, 10 carries, 62 yards, and he added 2 catches for 44 yards. And Week 10 versus Cleveland, like I mentioned, 100 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns with 4 catches for 14 yards. So right now, I know Brandon Bolden, he's locked in as that third down back. But right now, we could see Harris and Stevenson split carries. But who knows, maybe Harris, they're going to sit him out one more week now since Stevenson had the big ball game. But he's available in 69% of fantasy leagues, and he's definitely an ad this week. The next running back's Alex Collins of the Seattle Seahawks. So I know there's rumors that Chris Carson was almost going to suit up in this ball game, and he's designated to return from the IR now within the next 2 weeks here. But Alex Collins, I still think is going to get work. And Chris Carson, there was even reports a few weeks ago that he's not 100%, and it's possible he might miss the whole season, but obviously that's not the case. He's going to come back. Injuries obviously no joke. In the last few games, Collins is getting the workload, but he's not really putting up much numbers though. Week 7 versus New Orleans, 16 carries, 35 yards, a catch for 9 yards. Week 8 versus the Jaguars, 10 carries, 44 yards. And Week 10 at the Packers, just nothing was going in Russell Wilson's return. That Packer defense, what a ball game and a shutout they played in that one. So Week 10 at Green Bay, 10 carries, 41 yards, and a catch for 8 yards. So Week 11, I think him and Carson are going to split no matter what. They got a matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals, and I think a lot of people are actually going to drop Collins this week. But as of now, he's available in 48% of fantasy leagues. And I just like the way he runs the football in between the tackles and the burst and the power he has. So right here, he's definitely going to still have a role, in my opinion. And he's definitely worth the roster spot and a guy to get on the wire this week. The next running back's Jordan Howard of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jordan Howard, he's been a good running back for the Eagles here. And another good game in Week 10 for him. 12 carries, 83 yards. We know he's not going to catch the football, but we know there's short yardage running back. And he's getting the majority of the carries as well. So this running game, believe it or not, it's been better for Philly since Miles Sanders went out with the ankle injury on IR. So the last few games for him, Week 8 at Detroit, 12 carries, 57 yards, 2 TDs. Week 9 versus the Chargers, 71 yards and a touchdown. And Week 10, like I mentioned, 12 for 83. So right now he's available in 51% of fantasy leagues. And we might have just seen Miles Sanders lose his starting job once he comes back, or at least Howard split with him. We saw Boston Scott mixed in a little in this game, and Gainwell once in a while on third downs come in. But right here, Week 11, it is a tough matchup versus the Saints. But Howard right now has a role, and there's no word when Sanders is coming back, so he's definitely a waiver wire ad, in my opinion, this week. The next running back's Deonta Foreman of the Tennessee Titans. So Foreman, he had a decent amount of run in this one. 11 carries, 30 yards, 2 catches for 48 yards in the Week 10 matchup versus the Saints. So obviously Derrick Henry's out an extended period of time, possibly the season. And Foreman, they signed him as well when they signed Adrian Peterson in Week 9. In Week 9, he had 5 carries, 29 yards at the Rams. And then, like I mentioned, 11 carries in the ball game versus the New Orleans Saints, where Peterson, he didn't do as much in that game. Peterson only 8 carries, and McNichols down work. So right now, Foreman right now looks like the stronger back, the more physical back. And right here, this is the type of offense they run. They like that physical back, obviously, similar to a Derrick Henry. I'm not saying Foreman's a Henry, but his built is in a way, and the way he tries to break tackles and run the football. And obviously, Peterson's up there in age, 35, 36 years old. We don't know what his conditioning is after just coming back this season in week 9. But right here, Foreman's definitely a guy I would give a look at, and he's available widely in a huge amount of fantasy leagues at 97%. But this guy led the backfield in touches, so right here, he's definitely a play to give consideration to this week in the 5th and final running back I look to get on the wire this week. Taylor, the Green Bay Packers. So right here, Aaron Jones went down with a sprained MCL, and no diagnosis how long he's going to be out, but at least 2 to 4 weeks, in my opinion, unless he really heals quickly as Jones. But Patrick Taylor's going to be the backup now, it looks like, to A.J. Dillon. And A.J. Dillon's a total beast, no doubt about it, where he could handle 20, 30 carries a game. But Taylor, we saw him come in and spell Dillon in this one. 2 rushes for 7 yards. And to be honest here, the running back position this week on the waiver wire isn't as strong as it was in other weeks. But right now that we saw Jones go down, we saw Taylor get a couple carries. He's a guy next man up after Dillon, and he's a guy to keep in consideration. So right now he's available in 100% of fantasy leagues. That's a few running backs I'd look to get on the waiver wire for week 11 of the fantasy football season.